Walhalla's gates are open wide, its portals ever bending to receive those men, the sons of Mars, whose lives on earth are ending. A ghostly figure and phantom footsteps accompany brave souls who journey deep into the dark underworld of old Long Tunnel Mine. The 150-year-old former gold mining town of Walhalla was named after the halls of the dead of Norse mythology, perhaps with good reason. Disembodied footsteps stalk Windsor House, whose wine cellar served as a morgue when scarlet fever broke out in the 1870s. The ghost of a woman holding a baby has been encountered in the hall. And strange indents appear in the bed as if someone is present. Some believe they're caused by the ghost of a local madam. From a ghost in a general store to a haunted gold mine, and a poltergeist in a lolly shop. If one place deserves the name Ghost Town, it's Walhalla.
As we entered into the town of Walhalla, we thought, wow, this is an amazingly beautiful little town. You've got the bridge that we've just crossed over, and then over to your right, you've got the railway station. And as you go up a little bit further around the S-bend, you see this beautiful little white cottage on the right-hand side of the road. And you think, oh my God, look how old that is.
When we were driving through the mountains initially coming into Walhalla, it really was quite intimidating, having both of the mountains sort of looking down on you, but it was a really good feeling sort of going into it as well. You sort of felt very excited.
You're driving through the hills, you don't expect it to be there, and all of a sudden there's this really, really nice town in the middle of nowhere. It's in the middle of a valley. It's very old, it's really secluded, and to think they didn't have electricity 6-7 years ago is unbelievable.
It's like time stood still in Walhalla. It's an unusual place, to say the least. I mean, it's beautiful to look at. The people are very, very hospitable, and it's just like it's frozen in time. It's like looking at a postcard. The welcoming that we received in Walhalla was fantastic. We had people coming out of the shops and greeting us, and everyone was quite pleased to see you, and everyone had a story to tell. Walhalla is a beautiful little town, absolutely lovely. It's gold, as it were. It's one of those towns that if you go to visit, you know you'll go back again. The first person I remember meeting in Walhalla was Harvey Hutchinson, our tour guide. Now this fella is absolutely knowledgeable with information about Walhalla and the history, and even the hauntings that apparently happen around Walhalla. And he's the president of the Heritage Club too at Walhalla.
So Harvey, could you give us a bit of a brief history of this beautiful town?
Walhalla is quite unique in the fact that it's settled in the foothills, away from the world basically when it was first discovered. It took you up to 3 to 4 days to get here from Melbourne. And the town was actually discovered from the north, not from the south like we come in today. Its history starting from 1862, when Ned Stringer and two of his mates came into town by accident and found gold down there where the Lodge Hotel is today. From the next 20 years, the town just grew and grew to become the second largest town in Gippsland, And at one stage we had over 4,500 people living in the town and the surrounding districts. But unfortunately, after the turn of the century, the gold was getting deeper and deeper in the ground. It was costing more and more to get it out. The only fuel they had was timber, and they'd scoured the hills for about a 30-kilometre radius here, so it was costing them a lot of money to bring the timber in to run the mines. So by 1909, we had a new hospital. 1910, the railway actually arrived in town, and everyone thought that was going to be fantastic. But the next year, the Long Tunnel Extended mine closed, which is the second largest employer in town. 2 years later, the Long Tunnel mine closed. In the following year, 1914, the First World War started, so they had no labour, they had no work, and that was the demise of the town, unfortunately. From there on, the population halved basically every year. So most of the workforce had to leave town because there's no work for them. At the moment, we've got 9 people, 9 permanents, but we have up to 50 part-timers, and they keep the town fairly busy during the week and the weekends, and when the tourists come, there's always someone here to greet them.
We're here at the Windsor Bed and Breakfast here in Walhalla, and Glenys over here is one of the guests here at the Bed and Breakfast, and she got a bit of a story to tell us. Glenys, would you like to tell us a little bit about some of the information you have and the stories you've got from here?
There was a ghost tour and I really wanted to go on the ghost tour. I was standing near the little telephone box and I heard footsteps coming down the path. And I looked and I couldn't see anybody. And then I heard like a scratching, almost like the sound that a possum might make. And Harvey told me later on that there is a spirit called Alf. Alf does play tricks, and one of them is rattling at the door to get in. Now, I didn't hear it rattle, I heard the scratch and I heard the footsteps. I was speaking with one of the girls here this morning at breakfast, and there were 3 sisters that were playing further up the creek, pinning what we know as pin the tail on the donkey, but there had been a little fire that they'd lit, and the tail that was pinned on the little girl, it burnt, and consequently her clothes were burnt, and she died some 4 hours later. And I heard that child probably 3 times through the night, and it was a very distressed child, not crying, very weakened, just hearing slight sounds.
One of the reports that we'd heard is one of the tins in the lolly shop likes to move around and occasionally gets thrown at people.
How are you?
Not too bad. Now this is the
Hello.
place to come if you need lollies in Walhalla.
That's right,
Definitely.
this is our old lolly shop.
Every conceivable lolly under the
Yes,
sun.
yes, we have our boiled lollies which come from Pearsdale. We have a lot of old-fashioned tins that we put on show with lolly tins. The old-fashioned 1-inch licorice blocks we used to have years ago, the old white nights. Sherbet bombs, fruity ones, licorice ones, Turkish delights, you name it, we've got it. We have that particular tin there, the Whitman's, gold-coloured Whitman's tin.
With the lady on the front?
Yeah, we've had a ghost in here that turns it around on us occasionally over weekends. It seems to turn it on us.
Okay.
And we've had a lady come in here recently, she took a photo of it. Within 5 minutes of her taking a photo, it had moved. She said, look at that, it's moved.
And you don't see it moving at all?
We haven't seen it move. The only thing that we experienced here was I was sitting out there, Jen was in there, a chap was here with his kids, and the tin was physically thrown at his foot.
I heard it hit the floor. Bang, hit the floor. So
Normally,
Yeah.
if kids run in here, or a tin will fall straight down.
it'll take other
But
tins
not,
with it, but not this
that's right.
time.
We've had the tins down over Christmas. We just put them back,
Yesterday afternoon.
and so far it hasn't moved. But
you never
we'll
know.
wait.
Do you have any history, like any history about the shop, or has anything happened here to cause it?
No, I was talking to a lady just recently, and she said she can't understand why there should be ghosts in here when the hall is only new. The
Okay.
hall has only been built in 85
To
between
88.
85 to 88. But then that's fine. It's a new building, but you don't know what was here before the building. You don't know
Okay.
what's happened before the building was here. You know, that's the thing. Jen was
I was
changing the baby.
and we had to go into the library at the time to change. It was the only spot I could change her in, and it had a big old thick green tablecloth that had been folded by someone, I don't know who. So I put a lighter on top rail on it, a cloth nappy, then I changed her as per normal. But I was just looking over to her and I was observing her that she was moving slowly off, like someone was dragging her off the table, and I had to stop it, or she'll be on the floor.
And that was just here, just
Yeah,
in
just
the
next
hall.
door.
Just
here
in the hall,
itself,
in the library room.
Yeah.
So
Another incident
yeah.
there was my niece come over to see Carmen for her second birthday, and I let her in to go and see her, and she was looking at these nice photos on the wall, and suddenly she sees this haze go past her.
Yeah.
So there's people that can pick it up. I've had people in here, because one lady said, it's funny you say that because it's a female ghost in here.
Okay, so you're willing to let us set up a camera and
Yeah,
observe?
by all
Yes,
means. I mean,
yes, set it
I'd
up,
love
yes.
to. I'd love to be able to observe her or see her if she is here.
Well, hopefully we can
Yeah.
get it to move.
Yeah, that's right. We get this cold feelings. We get this goosebumps. We've had people come in and say the same thing. They feel it. I've taken people in the hall, and they've come out. One lady come out because she said I was feeling real cold. I was getting really cold. I had to come out.
Yeah, and a fortnight
That's
with when I was changing my daughter in there, she would not go back in that room.
No, that's right. She wouldn't go back in. The little girl wouldn't
She
go
was
back in.
scared to
So-
go back in there.
We'll see what happens tonight.
Yeah.
And hopefully we can get some
Hopefully,
action
yeah.
up there.
So do I. I really would to see exactly what is going on.
The cemetery in Walhalla is very unusual. It's up on a hill. I've never seen a cemetery on a hill before, let alone grave sites that actually get dug into the hill. It's very unusual to see, but that's the way Walhalla Cemetery is built. There's trees that actually grow through some of the grave sites. I do recall Harvey telling us at the cemetery that there were quite a number of unmarked graves, and there are quite a lot of people there who are not just in unmarked graves, but they're unaccounted for. So how many actual grave sites are there in this particular graveyard?
There's nearly 1,350 recognised grave sites, but so far we've only been able to identify 1,100 of them. We have them all on record.
Wow. So with the other ones, the unidentified people that are in here, obviously we don't know where they're from, what areas or what period of time?
Looking back through the old newspapers, you often get a report about an unidentified person buried in a grave, and you've got no way of recognising him back in those days. A lot of people just wandered into the town and didn't register their name, so they could have been vagabonds. There's just no way known that you can trace who they are.
Harvey, can you tell us a little bit about this particular gravesite?
Yes, Gary, the James Mitchell grave is probably the most best known grave in the cemetery. It gets the most publicity for unbelievable stories. We don't know why, but the most famous recently is a family came up here. The father said, "Well, that's a whole lot of rubbish," or the inscription on the tombstone. He actually laid across the tomb. The photo was taken with his family all around it. When the photos came back, he wasn't there.
Unbelievable.
And the next day after the photo was taken, actually, he'd had a heart attack as well. So the inscription where it says, "He who leans over my tomb shall quicken fall," maybe that was just coming to fruition.
Well, after telling us that story, Harvey, I think we will leave that one alone. I'm not about to go and lie on somebody's grave. It's pretty disrespectful to do that anyway. But look, we'll just leave that as myth around Walhalla, and thank you very much for your time.
That's the safest action. Thanks, Gary.
Some time ago there was some psychics that were staying in Walhalla, and they came up here and went through the mine, and in that very area they told us that there was 3 people, or three persons allegedly in the mine with us. And it's quite funny because when we walk through that area, there's always a very cold draft. And on a Monday morning, very typically, we do the airflow and temperature readings, and we always pick up a little bit of airflow in that area, and we know there's no ventilation shafts in that particular point. So I don't really know.
Harvey, could you tell us the particular story behind this cottage, please?
This is Elliott's Bakery, which is the oldest commercial building in the town. 30 years ago it was just a shell, just a frame leaning on an angle about to fall down.
Oh.
And some of our members got together and restored it. Ever since then it's created a lot of mystery within the town, with people staying in here and reporting unusual activities.
Unusual activities, okay. Could you tell us about that?
Very recently, well within the last 2 years, we had a group of miners come into town, and 1 o'clock in the morning, one of them wakes up with just felt like someone standing on his chest, and brings his hand up, there's nothing there, he reaches out, gets his cigarette lighter, put the light on, there's nothing there.
Okay.
But the pressure was still there and he could just feel it going away. Next morning they come down, had their breakfast, there was about 4 or 5 of them staying here that night, had their breakfast, went out and jumped in their truck to go to work. One of them forgot his smokes, runs back inside. All the chairs had been put in a straight row along the hallway.
Oh, really?
So they moved out the next day.
Oh, really?
And there was another group that's moved in since, and the same thing happened to them.
Oh.
There's just too many unexplained occurrences and
In this
basic
particular
movements.
house, yep.
Nobody has ever seen anything,
Okay.
but the actual physical act of things being moved.
Okay.
And this is, you know, right through the town we hear these stories. But this particular building is well renowned for that type of activity.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Strange but unexplained. This is the Long Tunnel Extended Gold Mine, which is the town's tourist mine. Started its life as the Hercules mine, and they went broke and the extended company took it over. But as you go in, I'm sure Sheriff will fill you in with all the details.
Fantastic. Can't wait to get in there.
Okay folks, welcome to Walhalla, the Long Tunnel Extended Gold Mine. My name's Sheriff, I'm your tour guide for tonight. Now you're going roughly 300 metres in and 150 metres underground. Anyone nervous or claustrophobic?
No.
Not yet. Okay, now we've got to wear a hard hat when we go under, and we don't know what the kids have had in their hair, so you've got to wear a hairnet, part of safety regulations, which I've already given you.
Well, when we went to go into the mines and we had to put these hair nets on, and for some reason, I just don't know why, but it just really tickled my funny bone, and I just couldn't stop laughing. I just thought we totally looked hilarious. And then we had to put the hats on as well, and that just started me off even more.
Okay, so you put your hair nets on, grab your helmets. Now it is a working mine, so as we go in, there's a tag board at the start of the mine. You'll notice all the tags are in the out position, which means no one's or shouldn't be in the mine, not unless the people we're looking for. Okay, now as you go in, you take a tag from the outside, you put it on the inside, that way if the mining company come up, they know how many's on the tour. So we ready to go?
Yep.
Everybody feeling all right?
Yep. At the moment we are.
That's the way to be. Okay, let's go.
Great. Okay.
Oh, sorry.
That's all right, just knock the tour guide around.
Sheriff, the guy who was taking us through the mines, he was just such a character. You know, he just was a real rough type of mining guy, but he was just such a lovely bloke. And for me, that was the highlight of the night, and the fact that I hadn't been into mines before. I was actually quite nervous about it.
Coming up on the next Haunted Australia.
It's just like someone rubbing your hand over your helmet like that. As I said, I haven't seen him, but other blokes have seen him, but for some reason this is where he normally is, in here. You get into some spots, the temperature just drops right out of it.
Yeah.
It's really bloody cold, and then you take about 5 or 6 steps and you're out of it. He's definitely around here.
He is.
Oh no, I thought I saw someone just move across.
Thank you.